Does the floor of your favorite car happen to look something kind of like this? A big old gaping rust holes and some major issues, even with the structure of the car. The inner rocker panel may be rotted out and in bad shape. Well, before you make the first cut, there's a few things you want to keep in mind before cutting this car apart so you make sure you get it back together where it'll work. Let me show you how we do it, because we don't have a frame table or fancy equipment to say everything is dead on, but there is a way to do it at home in your garage, and let me show you a technique. First off, our victim here is a 1968 Firebird. This information will hold true just about any kind of car, not just Firebirds or Camaros or Mustangs, but any car that has a rusty body shell that needs some repairs. Because let's be honest, these things are, this one happens to be over 50 years old. We got a couple of things that we're combating. Rust and corrosion, which has caused the car to distort and fall apart. And you got to be honest, 50 years old has probably had a few fender benders and some collisions here during its life. So who knows how true or how good this car really is? Well, I don't have a frame table. I don't plan on building a lot of cars in my life, and you're probably only going to build maybe one or maybe two. Do you want to spend all the money on a very expensive frame table or some kind of a jig to support the car so as you assemble the body for a one-time use only? Probably not. So I've got a quick way here to show you. You need a couple bubble levels, a tape measure, and a little bit of time, and, well, careful now, some geometry, but we're going to use just parallel lines, so it should be pretty easy to follow. But let me show you how we get this thing squared up so we can do continuous checks as we're cutting this thing apart to make sure, one, it's good before we tear it apart, and two, while you're assembling it, you should be good to go back together and know that you're within GM spec or even slightly better. Let me first thing I want to show you here, I'm going to dry erase board so you can kind of see what's going on inside my head, so maybe help you visualize it. All right, so let's get started. The first thing in this whole equation to make this thing work, we have to understand what level is. This is the horizon. This is the bubble level. This is what everything, if you take a bubble level, everything is level, that's what you're looking at. So that line isn't necessarily imaginary, but we're not going to see it. It isn't real except for when this bubble level defines it. So that's step one. Then, of course, in your car, this is a very highly technical drawing here. And if you can tell me which way is forward and backward, you're doing better than me. But this is your car in space right now currently. We have no idea where it's at in the sense of this is where it's at. And we're going to use the red line to represent my garage floor possibly. And as you can tell, it is not parallel with my line. And that's an over-exaggeration, but you kind of get the idea. The garage floor may not be level. It may just have a slight grade, but even now, I should maybe illustrate it that way. This will compensate for any of those inaccuracies. So the first step is you got to define where your car, what you're going to use for the point. I always use the rocker panel, which is highlighted here. On most of the cars I build, the rocker panel is part of the unibody or the frame. So that's a good point as long as it's not rusted out or severely damaged, but 99% of the time, ish, that's a good point of reference. So the first things first is we need to get this rocker panel level to our horizon or our level. So on the car, it makes more sense. You can shove the bubble level, sit right there on top of the rocker panel, and keep adjusting the car until, well, it's actually parallel, that rocker panel, with our horizon or our level line. So at this point now, these two lines are parallel. That's step one. And they're also going to take the car body, that's front to back, we'll call that maybe the x-axis. Then you also have the y-axis, side-to-side motion in case you're into that kind of thing. You can do wheelies or endos. We're going to level that off so it's kind of boring. Then we're going to take care of side-to-side and keep it nice level. So you also run both directions. So you'll actually get the car body shimmed up, jack stands, or my favorite, bricks. Get that car level with the bubble levels on both dimensions. And then once you've done that, next step isn't too bad. Even if your garage floor is sloped, you've already compensated for the slope with the jack stand, so these two lines are parallel. The next step will be, whenever you want to do measurements to the garage floor, well, you have a really long bubble level. I have a 7-foot bubble level that I use. So even if your garage floor isn't level, you can take your bubble level underneath the car, well, and if you have to, you shim it up with something, quarter inch, half inch, whatever it might be. And at this point now, our rocker panel is parallel with our bubble level or horizon. And now, if I've got my bubble level on the floor, even though it may not be floor itself is level, this is our measuring point. Imagine this being a 7-foot bubble level, then I can measure from point here to here and here to here, and those numbers should be the same. So what I can do then is go side to side on the car. So let's say this is 1 foot on this side of the car. Do the mirror on the driver's side or passenger side, depending on which way you see that car, and it should be 1 foot. What you can start doing then is start to measure whether the car has been twisted or damaged. So I said, I don't know if that really helps or not, but that's how I see it in my head. But level line, get the rocker panels level, and then you get your bubble level level to the floor where you want to measure at, and then you can drop your tape measure. I'm going to show you on a car here in real life how that works out, but I wanted to kind of illustrate so it made sense. But the unfortunate thing is anytime you move the bubble level on your floor, you may have to compensate for maybe the floor slope the other way. You may have to put your shim on this side. So, but that's the thing about it. It has a nice little indicator, tells you where it's at. Well, you just keep adjusting everything to its level, and you drop your tape measure down and get your measuring. Let me show you. All right, now we'll get you done here in real life. I got a little bubble level here. This is the rocker panel of the body shell here. Now, I've already got this car leveled up, so I don't have to explain it to you, but let me show you here. What the goal is, get that bubble level right on where it needs to be. This has got a little degree one on it, but nice and centered. Now, I've got this up on jack stands. And the other thing to keep in mind when supporting the vehicle is where you're going to support it. This car here is actually a lot of material that actually supports good weight there. And on the back, I put it on the rocker panel where the inner brace is at because I need to cut all this out. So I can't put the jack stands underneath the frame rails and the floorboard because I'm going to be cutting that out of the car. So keep that in mind too when supporting it. But the idea now is I've got this rocker panel nice and level to the floor front to back. I've got my long level here. I'll actually go from rocker panel here, shoot over to the driver's side there, and get the car level side to side just the same. So we got both X and Y axis nice and level with the bubble level. Like I said, I've already got this car body all trued up, as you can see here. So that step's already done. So that would be step one for you. Get the car level on both dimensions. Now, once you've done that, and grab my tape measure, let me show you something kind of cool here. Well, now that I've got the car nice and level, here's that 7-foot level. I have it sitting on your garage, on my garage floor. Now, let's say if your floor isn't level, you'll need to shim this up and down, but this is going to be where you drop the tape measure on this face here, then run it up on the point of the body. Let's call this here a point of reference. This is the quarter panel. This is the top corner of the rear door jamb opening here. So I put the tape measure there on the level. I measure it here and we'll take a look at it. We've got, get my hand stay steady, basically 39 and let's just call it 3/4. So if I go to the other side, that number should be practically the same, if not exactly the same. But I'm going to say there's no such thing as perfect on these old cars. Like I said, they've been hit, twisted, and even from the factory, they probably weren't the best assembled anyway. We'll do the same thing on this side and see what number we can come up with. And, well, this one's actually pretty much on the money, 39 3/4. So now you can see the advantage of this. Now I can measure side to side. So if I cut this quarter panel out and I want to put it back in, where does this point need to be? Well, 39 3/4. You might also have another cool trick I want to show you here. This is a chunk of all thread with a nut and a washer on it. And this is going to relate to these body mounts here in the floorboard. Obviously it's part of the floor pan, and you put these seat braces on, but you want to make sure your elevation is good. Well, you ever try to take a tape measure, run it to the floor underneath the car? It doesn't work. So what I do with this, drop this thing kind of like I guess a depth gauge, so to speak. Drop this through the body mount hole here, and I will hit my bubble level on the floor like I did for my tape measurements. Drop this in, and I adjust the nut up and down just to the point where that just touches my bubble level. So now I know my mechanical adjustment from here to here. Well, I guess I don't care what the measurement is, but I can pick this thing up, go to the other side, and I can check it. Same thing, it should be pretty much exactly the same, or say within about 1/16 of an inch. I guess you call these, high-tech Vinyl Village garage measurements. But as you can see, that thing's just resting on it, and I can't spin the washer. So this thing is side to side, completely level and the same height. So when I go cut all this out and I weld my new floor in, I can actually check the height of this in case I need to adjust it up and down before I weld the pinch weld back together. So I know this is as good as we can possibly get it here in your garage at home. Of course, there's one more area that I want to show you. I learned this on when I was building this car over here years ago. It got rendered real hard, had about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch of Bondo in the left rear quarter panel. I come to find out that frame rail is pushed down about 1 inch. And how I learned that was the same technique. There's your bubble level laying on the floor. Get it true and level. We know the body is good. And you can take a measurement, same thing. Drop the tape measure on the level. Check it right here on that body line, right where that peak of it is. Let's just call it 34 1/4. Jump over to this side. Same thing, it should be pretty much the same. So we can determine if this car's ever been hit or damaged, and it's, well, 34 1/4 on the money. So and you can actually take a couple notes if you want to. Use a permanent marker. Now keep in mind, permanent marker, you never do that on your primer or anything you're getting ready to paint, but this car is going to get stripped. We're going to take it down to bare metal, but I now have a point of reference. I start cutting this quarter panel out, tail panel off the car, the star starts bouncing around. I know 34 1/4 is where it was at. So I can actually, you know, push, pull, twist, whatever you need to get it back to that point. And unlike this car over here, that number would be like 34 1/4. It was 33 1/4. Car didn't look awful, but it sat low. This is one of the ways, again, how can you check this stuff at home? I don't have a frame table. I don't have an expensive chunk of plate steel to measure up from. I'm just using my garage floor, and this is how I get the results, and it actually comes out good when done. So there you have it. That technique works really good for making sure the car is square before you even cut it apart. So I would call this like step one before we're doing any structural cutting or welding of these cars. That rocker panel is the frame on this thing. So you want to know where it's at before you start. Was it good to begin with? Because last thing you want to do is weld a bunch of bracing in it. Come to find out the car was twisted. This is the way that you can check that at home. Like I said, we've done this body. I've dropped the tape measure all over like mirrored spots, left to right, left to right, left to right. We're all within an 1/8 of an inch. So this car is in fantastic shape. I don't feel it's had any major collision damage anywhere, which is kind of a rarity or an oddity for me. I normally get cars that are completely rusted in half and snap in two. So this car is going to be a great beginning. I've actually got a frame jig video that I've done to making a rear frame jig to, you know, position the frame rails right on these cars too, because this has been a good example. So even that technique, I thought about here, even the front subframe mounts here, left and right, you could drop a tape measure on the floor on those and check the height of those in case the car's been hit, twisted, or damaged. Or if you had to replace those, you know where to put them back in space, up, down, left, and right. So that's the other thing. This is like endless how you can use. Once the car now is level, you can drop a tape measure side to side anywhere and check your progress. You cut something apart, or you might find damage before welding in your braces or your new parts, so you can straighten this thing out so you don't end up with a quarter panel 1 inch lower on one side than the other side. I've seen it on some pretty nice cars that were done at professional shops where you actually step back and look, the car looks like it's leaning or twisted. Well, maybe they didn't do this, but if you do this well and do it right, all your measurements come out with, say, I'm making up this spec. This is just shooting from the hip with of an 1/8 of an inch. You should be good. Now, like I said, this is use at your own risk information. I'm just going to share this how I do it and get good results. This may not be the only way, and it may not be the best way. This is just how I do it and get fantastic results when I'm done. So, again, appreciate you following me on the journey. It's starting to rain. I don't want to have to build an ark. I don't want to flood my garage, but it's starting to come down pretty heavy today. So, I'm going to get this place shut down. I'll grab the camera and get you guys back here. But the next thing is cut that floor out and get the rocker panels torn out of this and start putting it back together piece by piece. And if anything you'd like to see on it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Of course, any parts in detail you'd like to see, let me know just the same. But I've had a lot of fun this time around. Hope you find these tips useful or helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts on that, or if you even think this is a fantastic idea, let me know. It's worked great for me 3 times so far in this garage, so I'm going to keep on doing it this way. Appreciate you following me on the journey. I'm going to get the heck out of here, and we'll catch you guys next time.